something I've noticed while we've been here at the conference is I've been talking to a lot of different natural product marketers, and I've discovered that so many people here don't want to translate their collateral into other languages. Do you guys feel like that would be kind of difficult to translate your collateral into like Chinese, Japanese, Korean, all those different languages? I feel like if we're going into India, I don't want to have to translate my products into Indian languages as well. That feels like way too much work, right?
You're supposed to be on my team, Anshika. You know, you see the second bullet, right? Out of the top 10 countries in the world, there's only one that you would export to where you don't have to translate your material, and that's the United Kingdom. Even when you go to Canada, they want French and English, right? So look at the countries that are larger than India. You know, India is now the fourth. India is larger than Japan, but China, Germany, Japan, Korea, Canada, as I mentioned, Brazil. You have to translate the material for the regulators. You have to translate the material for the consumers. Now, India has 23 languages. Okay? 23 official languages. Okay, more than all of Europe. But fortunately, you don't have to translate your collateral or your regulatory materials into any of those languages. The Indian regulator will accept English, American English, and consumers will largely in the beginning accept your American materials and collateral. Over time, you may want to focus on some languages depending on how you expand your sales. Okay? The other thing to realize about India is that you don't really have to sell the fact that your products are natural. Okay? India has used natural products for 3,000 years. Okay? So beating your chest about the fact that your product is natural is not as meaningful in India as it is in other parts of the world. There has been a resurgence of wanting to use traditional Indian products, okay? But you see many of those being sold by American and European companies here. The Shilajit and the Ashwagandha and one of those products are, of course, originated in India. The turmeric and the ginger, which my great-grandmother used to use, in great abundance, and we used to laugh at her at that time, and now Western science has validated those. So the new India is not like the old Taj Mahal. Somebody mentioned the Geo Center. The picture on the right is the Ambani Center in Mumbai. Mr. Ambani is the richest man in India, one of the top 5 or 10 richest people in the world. And India is transforming. So you see a lot of modern activity in India, although sometimes you see pictures that don't reflect that at all. So for every truth that I can tell you about India, an equal and opposite truth is also valid. So take any bold statements about India with a pinch of salt. So I'm not going to focus particularly on natural product brands because we've taken material. I can't talk about the work my clients have done. I can talk about work that you can see on Instagram or in public media. Okay? So you asked about American brands. Okay? Brand America and Brand California sells very well in India. Okay? And that's for many, many different reasons, but Indians aspire to the same cultural values as Americans do. Okay? They use Facebook, they use Google Maps to get around, they use WhatsApp, okay? So you don't have to worry about WeChat or all these other social media platforms. Amazon is big in India, although they don't work the same way as the US. Okay? American culture is widespread, everybody watches Netflix. Okay? Although India has its own culture, so you were right about that point. But the acceptance of American culture and values is very high. Okay? We've got some examples there of success. You see the advertising, you may see Indian faces, but the words are all in English. I did some work in the agriculture business, and India is now the largest consumer of California almonds in the world. Okay? Most people outside the almond business didn't know that. How many of you here knew that? Okay? Yeah, so nobody, right? You see the guy with the bat and the pads, right? And that's cricket. Cricket is the most popular sport in India. India runs cricket worldwide. World Cup cricket is going on right now. I was at my brother's home 2 days ago, and 400 million people were watching the India versus Zimbabwe game. So if you have big money to advertise on, you want to be in cricket any way you can. Okay, cricket is like basketball, football, and baseball put together from the American context.
Hi guys, GNC is a new offer introducing. Monthly, you have 3 products: GNC Reve and 100 gram creatine, calcium citrate.
So, some words you might not have understood, right? But you certainly got the brand, you got the ingredients. We picked up these things from Instagram because just to demonstrate to you how, again, an American brand like Instagram is very well integrated into Indian social media and culture and advertising.
So GNC is a really well-known brand, right? But is it just a fad, or are we actually seeing a change in how Indians are viewing their health?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, nutraceuticals weren't really very popular in that form in India, say 10 years ago. Okay, but I think the pandemic changed that in a very big way. And today, Indians are consuming nutraceuticals, not so much for sick care, as you might think, but for self-care, for improvement, for staying healthy. That's part of what led to the growth of the almond sales in India as well. During the pandemic, e-commerce grew by leaps and bounds in India, much faster than in any other country. And we can get into that in a little bit. But yeah, today, I think nutraceuticals are a big industry in India. Many Indian companies are also producing nutraceuticals. So 5 years ago, you may not have had so much competition from homegrown companies in India. But today, some of them are getting to be pretty good as far as the packaging and the marketing. Now, American brands still have the trust that I think is hard for new upcoming Indian brands to establish for themselves. So people who care about quality, reliability, consistency, will still choose American products. And that's how you can charge a premium for your product. Okay?
So that's nutraceuticals, but what about personal care? I feel like as I've been walking the show floor today, I've seen a lot of personal care brands, and I kind of was always under the impression that they would just use that Ayurveda thing rather than actual products.
Yeah. And again, 10 years ago, that would have been true. So what's happening today in India is that the rapid growth of e-commerce has been driven to start with, by young people under age 35, who are digitally native, meaning most of these people may not even have a computer or a tablet. They're using their mobile phone as their primary way to connect to the world. And many of them, because of the transformation that has happened in India, are actually making more money than their parents did on the very first day that they go to work. So they have plenty of money to spend, and they want to express that wealth. And one way they do that, especially women, but even young men, is to embrace higher quality personal brands that reflect their global mindset. They may be working for an American company, an Accenture or a Deloitte or Oracle or Google. All of these employ millions of people in India today. So they've become the leaders in promoting the more modern brands. And in the 2 weeks I spent in India, I just came back, like I said, 2 days ago, I saw so many new personal care brands advertised on billboards, on TV, all over the place. Not so many American brands, okay? And that's the gap that I think American companies can fill today, okay? Because the willingness to pay is there, the desire to upscale is there, but most of it is being filled currently by Indian companies, many of which are small. So a sophisticated marketer can come in and absolutely capture a big chunk of the market. Folks like Estee Lauder and Olay are there already.
This is new Olay 7-in-1 range. It has a serum and gel moisturizer with the goodness of niacinamide, vitamin C and peptides, जो target करता है 7 signs of aging like dullness, dark spots, fine lines, uneven tone, texture, dryness and even elasticity loss.
So again, in this ad, see, most of what she's speaking is English, but then she drops in a few words in a language you may not understand. In this case, it is Hindi. in the previous case with the what was that? The GNC ad, the guy was speaking, I think, Telugu. India has 23 official languages, so in Instagram you can easily get an influencer from a particular region or a movie star or a minor sports player to do this kind of work for you. Okay. So personal care is booming in India. There's a retail chain called Nykaa. They used to have their own products. Now they're selling anybody's products, so you can get in there if you want to be in physical retail. Amazon again is a big player in India, but they work very differently from Amazon USA. Bezos himself committed, Jeff Bezos, that India will be Amazon's second largest market globally, and they are spending unbelievable amounts of money to promote themselves in India. They have warehouses, dozens of warehouses now. They're building huge data centers. They're very, very committed to India and running it in the Indian way. I want to tell you a little bit about the way the consumer sector has been growing. Today, still, most of the physical retail sales are at single location mom and pop stores. Big brand retail, as we know, the Walmarts and the Sephoras and whatever, is still accounting for about 20% of overall retail sales. It's changing very fast, but the big box retailers are called the modern trade in India. That's the term they use. The other thing to know is that there is a big drive during the Indian festival of Diwali, which usually happens in October or November. So Christmas is not a big selling season in India, but many products now get launched over Diwali. This wasn't the case when I was growing up in India. This has been created by corporations, okay? But it's really become very well established now.
Okay, so we have all of these different sectors. What about food? I feel like India has such a deep, ancient food culture. Why would they want to buy anything from global brands, anyone who's here?
Yeah, that's a good question, Anshika. And food is so specific to regional habits, and in India, every 100 miles you have a different kind of cuisine. So getting established in the food business as a foreign company takes some planning. It takes a deep connection to the motivations of buyers, mothers, children, whatever. So, but companies have been immensely successful if they do that. So again, I'm going to give you an example of something that isn't a natural product, but it's a story that is just amazing. So Nestle is now India's largest global food company. They introduced a brand called Maggi, which is like your top ramen noodles. Okay? And they chose a very interesting way. They didn't just try to say, you should eat noodles. Okay? This was unknown. This category did not exist. Okay? They really focused on the mindset of the young mother, who in the past, her mother had cooked 5 meals a day, 4 meals a day for her children. But women were getting much more involved in professional roles. They didn't have the time, so when the kids came home from school, they were hungry, and Nestle said, hey, this is a meal that can be ready in 2 minutes. Today, Maggi has 140 different SKUs, with noodles, but with all these varieties, regional, local, spicy, non-spicy. So no matter what it is that you want, you can get it within the Maggi family. Not terribly healthy, okay, but it has absolutely, at one point, the Indian government temporarily banned Maggi, and there was a revolution. When the product came back on the market about 8 or 10 months later, the sales they went back to the way they used to be within 2 or 3 months. Okay? And the point I'm trying to make is that if you can understand what drives consumer behavior in India, you can be very successful. You don't have to be a domestic or local company. There are many other examples I could give you. Okay. This is across, packaged food. This is across fast food. You can see Domino's Pizza being successful. You can see KFC. All of these companies have adapted their products to the Indian market. Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I feel like I'm pretty convinced now that it makes sense to sell my products in India. I don't think I'm skeptical about it anymore. But so it seems like it's pretty smooth sailing from here on out, right? So we're all good. We can all head out.
We can all head out, except I have to answer a bunch of questions.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And It's never so easy in India. There are a number of hiccups. Okay, so India's distribution is fragmented. You can't go to an Unfi or one of these large distributors and they take care of the whole country for you. It's far away right now. I'm on India time. It's about 2 a.m. or something in India. So if you want to have a voice conversation with your partners in India, early morning in California works, late evening. If you're on the East Coast, you have to adjust accordingly. Okay. And India is like a continent, really, not like a country when you look at the consumer market. Okay? You wouldn't sell into Greece the same way you sell into Norway, or Spain the same way you would sell into France, which is a neighboring country. Right? So India is like 23 separate countries, if you will. So you have to understand some of the variations. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to have 23 separate marketing strategies, but you have to be aware of that diversity.
So you're saying, with all this fragmented distribution and all this stuff, what if people here don't have the budget of Nestle or Olay? Does that mean that they can't enter India because they can't go all in?
Again, 10 years ago I would have had a different answer, but today with the growth of e-commerce and also with the growth of what India calls Q-commerce, where they deliver in 15 or 20 minutes, there are many opportunities for niche brands, small players to enter one region or just 1 or 2 SKUs. There are many ways to take small steps and fine-tune your approach towards India. And there are many other ways that we could get into, but based on the questions that people have asked, I try to focus on the methods that I think will work. So here's some of them that are listed. I won't talk about these in any detail right now, because I want to make sure we answer the question. How are we doing on time, Anshika?
Let me take a look.
I need to grab
2:42, so we still have 50.
we have plenty of time for
Yeah.
questions, but let me just grab a drink of water. Hold on to my mic. Yes, sir.
I saw that you had one entry strategy, which is very interesting, about licensing, even if you have a patent or IP there. So I'm wondering, what would be some of your suggestions about identifying potential license partners in India?
Okay, great question. So to identify any kind of partner in India, okay, you have to do some serious diligence. The partners who approach you are likely not the best partners. Okay? And people whom you meet at a conference in Dubai, will probably be of Indian origin, because Dubai is, the Emirates are generally very heavily populated by people of Indian origin, but they're living outside India for a reason, and they may not be the best ways to enter. They'll all have brothers-in-law in India. I promise you, every one of them. I know those brothers-in-law. Okay, but you want to work with somebody located in India for India. India is too vast to be depending on someone in Singapore or Malaysia or Dubai or London or whatever. They have to be living there and experiencing India. So that's one criteria. And then you have to check their background. Don't look at their website to figure out the background. Because any of you who built a website, whether you know it or not, the back end was built in India. Okay? Doesn't matter. I mean, I did some work with a guy in Canada. I said, no, I do it all myself. And then I saw some of the names of the authors of the programming that he was doing, and sure enough, they were in India. Yeah. So you can't judge it just by the superficial skin that you see. You have to really get into who is the owner, who are the managers, how has the company been run. And so for that, you need help with due diligence. The Department of Commerce offers a basic level of due diligence. We offer a much deeper level where we can go visit, meet the managers, get their financials if they're a private limited or company or they're a listed company, and give you, very good information about how reliable they are. So all of that is important. Their respect for IP. If they violated the IP of others, things of that nature, we can find out. Okay. A great question. Yeah.
Let me ask a follow-up, because these are all good questions. Each of these markets you're hearing about are so different, but in India, to take on a licensing project, let's just say I'm a middle market company, do you think that's a big enough skill to actually be able to manage and enforce IP, or do you think it has to be a bigger company?
Well, enforcing IP is a different question from trusting your IP to be safe.
Well, managing a
So if you choose the right partner, enforcement won't be an issue, right? If you choose the wrong partner, you'll be spending a lot of money with lawyers, and it doesn't matter whether you win or lose, the lawyers would have won already, right? So that's particularly true in India. Okay? So the moment you get into a lawsuit, unless you are a billion-dollar company, you're not going to come out looking very happy with yourself.
Sounds like California.
That's a whole nother discussion, yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, sir.
Is there a regulatory body that approves or disapproves nutraceuticals?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are two regulatory bodies that you might encounter. If your product is considered to be a drug, okay, first of all, avoid that if possible, because it will take you 3 years to get it approved, and then you go through the CDSCA. If it's a supplement, go through another agency, which has become a lot easier to deal with, called the FSSAI. Okay? And the FSSAI is the agency that would regulate almost all supplements and drugs that any of you might be considering to take to India. Now they have some fairly well-defined rules that you have to meet, but they're not difficult to meet. I would say that sometimes people have told me Canada is harder to enter than India is. They do have a requirement that you must mark your product of whether it's of vegetable or animal origin. You must state your maximum retail price on the label. Okay? So these are things that you may not encounter in other countries. Okay? If the ingredient in your product is novel, then they'll want some test results. If that ingredient has already been encountered by them before, then it's very straightforward.
So for instance, the ingredient in our formulation is approved, so to speak. DSHA approves it in the United States and Canada. But I try to market it in Southeast Asia or India, and they told me to do a couple of clinical trials, so including safety studies. So there's a barrier for me to enter India right there.
Yeah, so we can discuss your situation specifically offline. But yeah, if they have not encountered that ingredient before. Okay, so I have to give you some background. This is an important question because people get frustrated by this. Okay, why do I have to go through this extra hoop? But remember, India is one of the few countries in the world that for 200 years was ruled by a corporation. Okay, the British East India Company ruled India, and then the British Crown took over. Okay, they did not treat India and Indians very well. When the British East India Company arrived on the shores of India, India produced 20% of the world's GDP. In 1947, when the British Crown finally left, India produced 2% of the world's GDP. So there's an inbuilt gene, I'd like to say, in the Indian mindset that says, you're a foreign company, are you going to screw me somehow? Okay. So you have to overcome that barrier. But when you do, the rewards can be huge because of the scale of the market. But your case may be simpler than that, but you have to understand that that's the background that the Indian regulatory system and the officials who run it are basing their things on. Okay, so you had a question, sorry.
Yeah, this might help the group. We just recently got an FSSAI registration completed in 90 days. But my question to you is, can you talk about social media channels and how easy it is to onboard micro and macro influencers?
Yeah, so social media has become the way that new brands establish themselves in India, and the social media platforms that are used in India are very much familiar to all of us. Facebook and Google and X or Twitter and mostly Instagram. Today, I think most of the early influencing comes through Instagram. You can, if you're going to work in India and you're new to the country, your partner might be able to handle that. Or you may be able to start with your existing media that you have, your existing collateral, and just you have to show your maximum retail price and so on. But other than that, I would say that in many cases you can start with that material, and then you can recruit local celebrities, local influencers. That should be a pretty straightforward process. There are agencies who help do that. Have you moved along that process already, sir?
We're working on it.
I see. Yeah, but 90 days to get an FSSAI approval is good. Yeah. So,
Now, we did use a consultant to help us with that.
yeah. I think in almost every case, if you see success in India, it comes from two ways. You know, if you're a $1 billion company, you'll put 30 people on the ground in India for 2 years, and there's no secrets in India. You know, there's other countries, I won't name, some large countries in Asia where you have to know somebody. Okay, and unless you know somebody, and knowing somebody may involve, you know, many ethical and maybe some not so ethical ways to get things done. That's no longer the case in India. Okay? It might have been at one point, but today India is a transparent country. Okay? There are no secrets in India as long as you are willing to listen. And for my American clients, I say as long as you are willing to be humble, which is very hard for us as Americans to do. We want to say our product is the best, our company is the best, our way of running business is the best. That sometimes runs into resistance in India. But if you are willing to listen and is willing to adapt, you'll find that India is not a difficult country to do business in. Okay. Did I answer your question? Yeah. Okay. There was a few more that I haven't gotten to, I think. Don't be shy. You have to ask me tough questions. You have a question on your mind, I think, no?
No, I don't. I'm just enjoying hearing everybody else's questions.
Am I a good entertainer?
You are.
Oh, right, okay. Maybe I have a second career. Yes, sir.
What about the price premium, ability to price products at a premium nature in India, and competition with that?
Yeah. So, at one level, Indian mindset is that there's always sticker shock. You could sell something for $100. If you sold it for $50, you'd still get the same reaction. Sold it for $10, you'd still get that same reaction. So let's keep that aside. That's just a matter of conversational etiquette. Okay. There's no shortage of money in India. Okay. India is a country of 1.4 billion people. For most of the people in this room, no matter what product you're selling, I say with great confidence that 800 million of those people will never be able to afford your product. Okay? They're living week by week, day by day, and you can't expect them to spend a month of salary on something that you want to sell them as a consumer product, right? But then as you climb up the salary scale, the upper 100 million people in India live better lives than I would say 95% of the people in this room. You know, in many ways, whatever measure you have, in terms of a comfort level, in terms of the amount of overseas travel they're doing, in terms of, my brother is a prominent journalist. He has a full-time driver. He has one person who comes and cooks breakfast, another person who comes and cooks lunch and dinner. Okay? He's not lavishly wealthy. He's middle class. That's you know, not unusual at all in India. So, if there's a product that he really needs to buy, it doesn't really matter whether it's at American prices or not. But it has to provide value. The Indians are not price sensitive as much as they are value sensitive. So when we examine supplement sales in India, you know, we're not calculating cost per pill or cost per bottle. Okay? Back of the mind, the Indian buyer is saying, how much will it cost me per month to consume this product? Okay? And that number has to be reasonable. You know, it has to justify in their mind to not buy the inexpensive Indian product or to use some traditional product that their grandparents used. But once they see that logic, absolutely, they're willing to buy. If you look at sales of other consumer durables in India, cars, you know, people are buying the most expensive cars in India, which are tariffed at over 100%. So when Mercedes-Benz brings in a car into India, or you know, Chrysler Maybach, you know, those are all tariffed at well over 100%, but people are still buying.
You mean a Mercedes Maybach?
I'm sorry?
Not a Chrysler Maybach, it's a Mercedes
Mercedes Maybach, sorry, yeah. I'm thinking of the old days when they were one company. Sorry about that, yeah. I just visited a physician in India, and the Maybach in his driveway right there at his office. I haven't seen so many Maybachs even in LA. Yeah. Okay, Sarita, you had a question?
No, I was just person in the front row. I did have a question.
Okay.
I'm wondering who the key retailers in India right now are. Obviously, like Blinkit and Swiggy are the fastest. And probably if I'm talking to my cousin, what she would pull out if she wanted to order something to the house ASAP. Are there any other big players the way that maybe like the big buyers here at Expo West are like Whole Foods, Target, Sprouts, etc.
Okay, so you mentioned Blinkit and
Swiggy.
So let me just explain. I refer to quick Q-commerce in India. Let me just explain how Q-commerce works briefly, and correct me if I'm wrong as I go. Okay. So last week, my brother. I was staying with my brother for a couple of days, and he sent his man Friday out to buy some stuff for me, and he forgot one product. 9:30 at night. Okay. And I said, I can just walk over to the market, it's open. So why do you bother? Click, click. And 15 minutes later, somebody shows up at the door with that one product. Okay? It's almost like instant. Okay? And that's the biggest growing part of e-commerce in India today. There's Blinkit, there's Zepto, there's Swiggy. And these are not like DoorDash types of companies where they go to the store and buy it and bring it to you. These are companies that have micro warehouses all over the city. Okay? Sometimes they go to the store to buy it, but in many cases they have their own inventory. Okay? And they bring it to you instantly. It's almost always either on a bicycle or somebody walking there or a motorbike. There are no vans or trucks pulling up to bring you this material. This is an urban phenomenon. You don't see it in small towns, but among the top 20 cities in India, this is one of the fastest growth platforms. Now, whether some of you want to be on those Q-commerce channels or not is another question. Okay? Most likely you will want to start, if you're in e-commerce, you will want to start on Amazon India, which I said earlier runs very differently from Amazon USA. Because Amazon itself is not selling any products. It's like the merchant marketplace. So you have to tie up with the appropriate merchant on Amazon. And that's a whole art unto itself. Because there are many merchants that I wouldn't recommend for any of you. And some are too large, some are too small, some won't really match your needs. You have to find somebody that's appropriate. In terms of the big physical retailers, the retail marketplace has changed quite a bit. Some of the big box retailers actually didn't survive, and now a company called Reliance, which is part of the empire of India's richest man, Mukesh Ambani, they own a whole bunch of different kinds of retail stores, including grocery stores, cosmetic stores, clothing stores, and so on. So now dealing with somebody as powerful as Reliance is like dealing with Walmart. You do business on their terms. There are some natural or more healthy kind of food chains as well. They're relatively small but growing. Okay. There are online e-commerce drug channels like 1mg.com, which is now owned by the Tata Group, and you can sell nutraceuticals on that channel. One of the largest hospital chains in India, Apollo, runs a chain of pharmacies, and they also carry some nutraceuticals. Again, you have to find the right place for your product, because if you're going to be sitting next to a whole bunch of drug company products, remember that drug companies have an unlimited amount of money to spend. And in India, they will hire hundreds of salespeople in each town. So you can't be easily competing with them if you're selling a supplement and you're competing with an army of 1,000 salespeople in any one city. Okay? Does that start to answer your question?
Yeah, that's really helpful.
Yeah. So Reliance is the big chain. There are others as well. But even within those chains, we had one of our clients sign up with Reliance. And I won't get into the deal they gave Reliance to do that initial piece of business. But then the salespeople really had to sell to each store. So it required an additional layer. Not like you get approved by corporate and suddenly the orders start pouring in.
I'm just imagining, in India you have if you're not going to order something from Swiggy, you just go to the corner market, the bazaar there, and then you just grab okra or whatever you need. But
So nobody does that anymore either, because they call on the phone. The little retailer, they'll send, in India it's always a boy, it's a male, but so there's somebody who will bring the food to your doorstep. India has had that kind of delivery since long before Amazon or whatever, So that's existed for more than 30 years. As soon as the mobile phone became popular, that kind of delivery became very common. There's another thing that exists in India which isn't really relevant to you folks right now, but I should tell you. India has the world's most efficient payment system in place. And this happened over the pandemic. It existed in 2019, but today, virtually every little merchant has a way to accept electronic payment. You don't need a credit card. All you need is a QR code. They give the merchants a free QR code. It's hanging there. Could be a seller carrying food in a basket, walking the street or whatever. You point your phone at the QR code. You click a button. The seller doesn't even have to look at their phone. They get a voice message saying 350 rupees deposited. It's done. Okay? It's very easy for the seller, it's very easy for the buyer, but the biggest beneficiary of that has been the Indian government. But many of these small merchants never paid income taxes. They never reported any of their income, it was all cash dealing. Now the money is going into a bank account. So all of a sudden, Indian government today, economy is growing at 8%. Government revenues are growing at 12%. So the government has plenty of money to spend as well. So amazing changes are happening. These are all in the last few years. Did I miss any questions?
Actually, I think you guys got about 45 minutes. I ceded 10 minutes to you, but we're in transition now to the next panel.
Okay.
FYI, but any last questions, please ask. India is fascinating, as you can see. It's compelling to folks. So what about a trade agreement, tariffs between US and India?
Yeah, I didn't say anything about that yet, so if I'd asked about it very quickly. So first of all, people ask me, isn't it harder to enter India now with all the stuff that's gone on since January of last year? Okay. Well, a lot of tariffs have been imposed on imports coming in from India and back and forth, and it's crazy, and you see some of that in the news. India has not retaliated with one single increase in tariffs on any products coming into the country. India had high import duties in the past. They did not retaliate. Canada retaliated, Europe retaliated, Japan retaliated, India did not retaliate. Okay. And why India didn't retaliate is something we can talk about over a beer, but it's the Indian way of doing things. Okay. As far as how the trade agreements stand today, you asked me that a month ago, the answer would have been different. 3 weeks ago, it would have been different. Now again, I think it's different. India and the US did a joint statement about 2.5 weeks ago saying India would reduce duties on certain items, the US would make some other changes, and all of those things were looking very good. It was a framework agreement, there was nothing signed as such, and they said we'll work out the rest. And then just a few days later, the administration lost the case with the Supreme Court, and then President Trump imposed 10% or 15% duties, I've lost track. 15, right? So Indians have not moved forward. They're saying, you calm down, settle down, tell us what the rules are going to be. In the meantime, India has a problem with oil because now the Straits of Hormuz are closed. India depends on oil imports. And so guess where they're going to get that oil from?
Oil in this Western Hemisphere, I guess.
Yeah, well, so oil and gas exports from the US to India have quadrupled. Okay? But still, that's not enough to fill the gap. Okay? Well, India was getting oil from Saudi Arabia, from Qatar, from all of the Middle East. And so news today is India is buying more oil from Russia. Because they can't do it. They can't, the country will stop if they don't. Right? So it's an unpleasant thought, but that's what's happening. Yes, ma'am.
I have a little different question.
Yeah.
India, their organic certification doesn't recognize either the EU or the USA organic certification. They only recognize Australia. Do you see that changing anytime soon, or what kind of pressure can be brought on them? We recognize the organic coming from India, but they will not recognize organic products going in.
Yeah, so anything that has to do with products that are grown on farms, you have to remember that India, despite all of its industrial growth, 60% of Indians still work on farms at subsistence level. Okay? India is a democracy, right? So the people, the elected officials know that their next election victory depends on the support of the farmers, right? So anything that is harmful to the farmers, or could be perceived, or could be portrayed by the opposition party as being harmful to farmers, is a very sensitive point in India. These things will change over time, because I felt that India could easily meet all of the American requirements, but it will need to be done in a manner acceptable to the Indians. Okay? And unfortunately, I think in the last 18 months, we've seen a regression in the way things would be acceptable. You can't force it down, the Indian government's mind, because the opposition parties will say, hey, you just rolled over. And that's not going to let them win the next election.
They should consider ingredients that don't grow in India. There are plenty of them.
Sorry, say that again?
They should consider those ingredients that don't grow in India. There are plenty of them.
Oh yes. And we've used that logic successfully in many occasions. We worked with the largest pistachio grower in the world, what's now called the Wonderful Company. And there was a high duty on pistachios. We lobbied for the Indian government to lower the duty, and this was the logic we used. Pistas grow in Iran, a little bit used to grow in Afghanistan, and otherwise California is the largest grower of pistachios. So look, it's a healthy product, it's heart healthy. They tested it on, the Wonderful Company paid for tests in India, and then it took a couple of years, but they lowered the duty on pistachios. So that logic can be used, but you have to approach it with great sensitivity. And that's, I think, what has been lost in the last few months. It will come back, but the negotiations have to go in a manner that don't inflame the opposition party. Okay, and that's what sometimes I think. In the U.S., unfortunately, we are so happy dealing with dictators, right? We tell them what to do. They say yes, fine. Okay? So while there's all this talk about two democracies, background, you have this issue that, hey, you can't arm twist another democracy. You see that with Canada.